So here we are at the entrance to the Dune trails, which is at Castle Neck, which is really what Crane Beach is just a part of. And it's my favorite place to go in the winter because these trails, there's 5 miles of trails in there. They're dry, so you're not, mucking around and Willowdale State Forest in the winter. When you get in there, it's the dunes form sort of an amphitheater. They reflect the light back on you and they protect you from the wind. We have a really windy day here today, and so you can be actually fairly warm. So here's the trails, and they're really well marked. We're right here at the beginning of the Green Trail, and what we're going to do today, I think, is we're going to go over to Wigwam Hill. It's actually a glacial drumlin that was covered by sand. Exciting place to go. So let's go for a walk. This is the Green Trail. It's a loop. It connects to the Red Trail, and then if you want, you can go even farther out to the very tip of Castle Neck. I don't know if you know that we once had a lighthouse here at Crane Beach, and the lightkeeper was appointed by Abraham Lincoln, and he was here for about 50 years. And then we had 2 more lighthouses. And then eventually our lighthouse was actually picked up and moved to Martha's Vineyard, to Edgartown. Why did they take our lighthouse away? This is why I stopped at this location. The beach, the sand is always changing here at Castle Neck. So the lighthouse was originally erected fairly close to the water. And then after something like this particular lighthouse, maybe 50 years or so, the beach had grown so far away. Now the lighthouse was almost 1,000 feet away from the beach. So I want to show you where it was. I've kind of triangulated looking at photos, and if you look down in here, you can see that there's the pine, and then there is a little depression there with birch trees. So when I've looked at the maps and I've looked at photos of where it was, I've come to realize that the lighthouse was actually sitting right there, and they had to dig it out of the sand. It was so deep into the sand that they had to access it from the upper window. The lower door now was completely covered with sand. So they excavated it and took it apart and then rebuilt it. So that's where the Ipswich Lighthouse was after all those years, so far away from the water itself. So, the reason we actually can walk here and that there actually is all this sand is the Hudsonia, which holds it all together. This plant we're looking at here is sort of like the heathers that you would find in Scotland. And here at the top we see maybe 8 inches. In the spring it has a beautiful yellow flower, but what we don't see here is the roots of the heather. They go maybe a couple of feet down, the Hudsonia, I should say, and they're holding it all together. So one of the things that's really important to maintain and not tramp down. So when you're walking in the dunes, always stay on the guided trails and don't walk over the heather and the other plants that we're going to talk about along the way. This is another thing that's holding the beach together. It's usually just called beach grass, and you can see it here on this hillside where we have the Hudsonia down deeper. The beach grass is higher up, and we have several kinds of grass that grow here at Crane Beach. And the beach grass actually grows up in the dunes. It has a couple of different names. There's another couple of grasses that have traditionally been called Spartina cordgrass. There's a very coarse cordgrass. You see it at the beach. It's always breaking up and flowing and making mounds on the beach. And then there's this very soft cordgrass, Spartina patens, which the cows loved. So when the colonists came and they came and discovered that they didn't have to plant hay to have hay for the cattle. There was hay here already out here on the beach. So the beach grass became one of the most important assets for early colonists. What we're looking at here, though, is the beach grass that holds the dunes together. So we're in a pitch pine forest. We're probably all familiar with the white pines, which are dominant in this area, nice lumber. The pitch pines, on the other hand, are very kind of windy trees. They're not straight. They have these large cones on them, but they were also useful because they have a lot of probably what we would call sap or turpentine. And when the first settlers came to Ipswich, there was a lot of things they didn't have that they were accustomed to in England, but they discovered that they could take the small branches of the pitch pines and you could there's so much the sap in them that you could set them on fire and use them like a candle. And so you may know the road, Candlewood Road, because it was named that probably because there's some stands of pitch pines out there, and that's where people would go to find just the perfect twigs to use as candles, until of course they began making candle wax on their own. We're at a cranberry bog. So the story is supposed to be that Mrs. Crane wanted cranberry bogs, and Mr. Crane, of course, had them planted. So you can see through here, you see the reddish color. And there are places where you can go in and you can pick the cranberries. Of course, there's none right now because the deer feed off of them during the winter. But here we are, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. And look at this, we're looking across at water. We're not seeing ice. This is, to me, is the warmest year on record that I've lived in Ipswich. Very unusual that we've barely had ice at all this year. Some years I've gone out and I find the cranberries will be frozen in the ice because the ice came early in the year, but no ice this year. This is just a really remarkable spot here. First of all, we took a little diversion from our supposed hike to Wigwam Hill, which we're still going to do. But I wanted to show you this new trail that the trustees have made to replace the wet spot. And so, first of all, we're looking out at the ocean, and you can see the breakers across there. The reason there are breakers, and it's been that way since colonial days and even longer, is because there's Plum Island, and it has that moraine right at the end of it. And then Plum Island basically sort of sinks down, the sandbar sinks down underneath the water, but it's still there. And that's why you're seeing the waves break, not here at Crane Beach, but out about, half a mile out. So when we're looking across, there's Little Neck right there, and Great Neck is right behind it. The next thing I see over here to the right is a hill, and that's in Raleigh. Used to be ski slopes way back in Raleigh. As we look further over, we can see Seabrook. I believe I see. It may be hard to see, in this video, but I can see the reactors at the Seabrook power plant and the town of Seabrook. Further up, of course, there's the whole New Hampshire coastline. And if it was maybe a little bit clearer, right in there, we would be seeing Mount Augmenticus, which is a 700-foot mountain in York. So, I was out here once years ago, and I was on the sandier, the higher dunes, and I looked at the next dune up, and there was this huge deer with great antlers, and he just looked at me, and I looked at him. As I got closer, he ran off. But the deer live out here in the middle. This, as you see, this is all forested in the middle, and it's off limits for people. But there was such a population of deer here many years ago that they actually had to take them out because there was so much Lyme disease on Argilla Rd. But it's a herd that they can manage pretty easily. invasive, I suppose invasive plants that I encounter out here. Just an old split rail fence. But if you look closely, you can see there's these green thorny vines growing all over it. I'm not positive, but I think they may be the English rose. I'll have to come out here in the summer and see if they really are kind of a rose. Fortunately, they're not on the trails, but if you were to try to walk out through here, there is so much of this that you could really get entangled in that and have a hard time getting yourself loose. So another good reason to follow the rules and stay on the trails. This is a drumlin, and a drumlin is a glacial hill that was formed when the glaciers, which were here only say 15,000 years ago, as they receded, as they moved forward, they really acted like a bulldozer, pushing huge boulders and gravel and sand, stone and dirt until the glacial period began to recede. As they receded, they left behind what they had pushed, and they formed these drumlins, and there are lots of other glacial features like moraines that are very similar. There was a farmer who had inherited the land by inheritance. He acquired the land, and he decided to sell off the trees, and we've seen all these trees here. And when he did, the sand just came and covered up the whole farm, and the Wigwam farm, Wigwam Hill farm, was no more, and any house or whatever he might have had there was also covered up. Now, Mr. Crane apparently built a little cabin up here on Wigwam Hill during his period here almost 100 years ago, and it's also covered almost completely with sand except for the chimney. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's right up there. There's the chimney. There's a little trail that will take you up to it, but the trustees have blocked that off, and I try to honor their request for us to stay on the trail. The only thing you can see now is that chimney from the cabin. Just in case you're questioning whether this could really have ever been land here, it was a drumlin, and there are rocks right here. These rocks on the side of the trail are just poking out of the sand here, and this was, of course, the smaller rocks that the glacier would have pushed ahead of it. As you go out to Gloucester and Essex, especially in West Gloucester, there's some amazing drumlins out there. And then in Gloucester, of course, the whole center of Cape Ann is a huge field of boulders left from the glacial period, which was only receded only 15 to 12,000 years ago. So it's really quite recent in human history. That's actually the Castle Neck River we're looking at, and it empties into Essex Bay. That's Plum Island on the other side, and I think we can see the barn, but as you go further around, you can see the very historic Choate House that dates back to the early 1700s. This is my favorite vegetation in the whole of Castle Neck. It's not actually a plant, it's a lichen, and it's called Cladonia. So let's take a look at this. It's beautiful all year round. In the spring it will become much greener. It's unlike the Hudsonia, which we talked about earlier, which goes probably a couple feet down and really anchors the soil. The Cladonia sits on top of the sand, and purposefully, because whereas the Hudsonia grows by its roots and creeps underneath the soil, the Cladonia is really relying on the wind to blow it around, and when it does, when it does blow around and roots itself in a new spot, quickly forms a little sort of a root system, anchors itself in, and you get a new field of Cladonia. So what you want to do, even though this is really nice to see here, is come back here in the spring as it really begins to brighten up. And also, you know, by late spring, the Hudsonia will have its yellow flowers, and the fields are just a beautiful mix of colors with the Hudsonia and the Cladonia. We just had to come here. This is the most phenomenal view in my mind on all of Castle Neck. It's equal to the one we saw on the new trail on the other side. So I don't know if there's a drumlin underneath this dune. It's a huge dune. And so I don't know the geographical history of it. We left the drumlin at Wigwam Hill and we came down, but then we came back up again for this particular sand dune. And this is another really nice run down. So if we were to continue, the trail goes around the curve, and then there's a split. The split takes you, on the right, takes you over here. So this is a beach that most people don't even know that Ipswich has. We all know Pavilion Beach, we know Steep Hill Beach, and of course we know Crane Beach. If you were to go all the way around Crane to get to the end and then keep going, you would come back along here. And what we're looking at across here is the Castle Neck River. So pretty big river here, but you know, it starts, there's the ice cream stand on Route 133 right at Northgate Road. The river is, at that point, is really a small stream, and it crosses the road, and it begins as really as just a trickle right next to the Pony Express soccer fields. So it doesn't actually pick up that much water along the way. What happens is, this is Essex Bay out there, and so you know, it's a tidal river. The water will flow up the Castle Neck River, and it will flood all those salt marshes that we always drive next to as we're coming out Argilla Road. So across the Castle Neck River, again, this is Choate Island, originally called Hog Island, the reason being that they kept hogs on that island. There is a historic house around the corner here. You can see that when you're out walking on the beach over here. Now the beach here is nice. It's not the same as Crane Beach. It's actually much calmer. It has a little bit more mud in some places and vegetation. What I suggest is maybe we'll do another walk, and we'll go to Castle Neck Beach and see a beach that people haven't seen before. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for joining us on our little walk today. A quick little view of the features that you might find at Castle Neck, which most people would call Crane Beach, but there's much more to Crane Beach than Castle Neck, and much more than just the castle and the beach. I think if you want to learn a little bit more and go visit the trails, I suggest you visit the Trustees of Reservations site, and great trail maps, a lot of more information about how to get there, how to park. Make sure that when you're on the trails that you stay on the trails. It's all there for viewing, but those little trails you see on the side are for the animals. This is just the first of a series of videos that we hope to do. We're going to visit ecological features, historic features, just about everything about Ipswich. You know, we were talking yesterday and I said, you know, I don't think I even need to go anywhere else. Ipswich has so much to offer.